He fed a dying alien girl, not knowing he was saving his future queen and wife. Ethan Carter adjusted the controls of his small scout ship as it dipped into the thin atmosphere of the planet. The landing was rough, and small clouds of dust and pale green spores rose around the landing pads. He squinted through the cockpit window at the rocky surface below. The planet was barely explored, at the far edge of human-controlled space. No large settlements, no mining colonies, just rocks, strange glowing plants, and a quiet, eerie wind that whispered through the mountains. Ethan had been sent here for a routine supply drop to a distant research outpost. His job was simple: deliver food, tools, and medical supplies, make sure the outpost had what it needed, and leave before anything dangerous appeared. But he liked these missions. They were lonely, yes, but they were also quiet, peaceful in a strange way. Out here the galaxy felt vast and alive, and sometimes he imagined that he could hear it breathing. He stepped out of the ship, pulling his jacket tight against the cold wind. The air was thin, and each breath made his lungs ache slightly. Dust and spores clung to his boots. He scanned the area with his handheld sensor, checking for life forms. For the most part, it was empty. But then, a faint spike on the life sensor caught his attention. It was small, almost negligible, but it was there. Ethan frowned. It could be a small animal, some harmless creature that lived in the rocks, but there was something odd about it. The spike was irregular, weak, uneven. It wasn't moving like a normal animal. He felt a twinge of concern. Something small was alive out there, but struggling. He followed the signal through the jagged cliffs, over strange moss-covered rocks that glowed faintly in the twilight. The light of the planet's sun was dim, filtered through a thin, greenish mist that seemed to float over everything. As he went deeper into the rocky canyon, he heard a faint, trembling cry. At first he thought it was his imagination, but then it came again, a small, high-pitched sound, weak and fragile. He froze and listened. The sound was desperate, almost like someone calling for help. Ethan's heart raced. He knew better than to ignore a life form in distress. He followed the cry and found her lying in a small patch of shadow, half hidden behind a jagged rock. She was tiny, no more than a child in human size, with delicate limbs and luminous blue eyes that seemed almost too bright for the dim light. Her skin was pale, almost transparent, and she shivered as she lay curled up on the dusty ground. Her breathing was shallow and her chest rose and fell with difficulty. Ethan's heart tightened. He knelt beside her, checking for signs of life. She was alive, barely, but weak. Her body looked fragile and she had bruises along her arms and legs. She had been abandoned or left to die. A small part of him panicked. Human protocols warned against touching unknown alien life forms. They could carry diseases or toxins, but another part of him, the larger part, overrode that fear. He could not just leave her here. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, kneeling closer. "I'm not going to hurt you. Can you eat?" She opened her glowing eyes slowly and looked at him. The expression on her face was confusing: fear, confusion, and something else, something deep and old, like she knew far more than a child should. She tried to move, but her body was too weak. Ethan carefully unwrapped a small pack of rations from his belt. He had expected to give them to the research outpost, but this seemed more urgent. He broke off a piece of the nutrient bar and held it close to her lips. Her eyes widened slightly. She leaned forward and took it in a tiny, trembling hand. She ate slowly, carefully, and Ethan watched her closely. Her skin seemed to glow faintly as she ate, as if the food gave her more than just energy. You're strong," he said softly. "You're going to be okay. I'll help you." She did not speak. She only stared at him with those bright blue eyes, as if she was trying to understand him, or perhaps judging him. Ethan had no idea what her species was. He had never seen anything like her before. He lifted her gently, careful not to hurt her, and carried her toward his ship. The ground was rough, but he kept his steps slow and steady. She made a soft sound as he moved, almost like a sigh, and Ethan realized she was trusting him. Somehow. Back at the ship, he placed her on a soft blanket he had stored in the cargo bay. She curled up, exhausted, and closed her eyes. Ethan checked her pulse. It was weak but steady. He rummaged through his medical supplies and prepared a simple hydration solution. "This will help you," he said quietly, pouring some into a small cup. He guided it to her lips. She drank carefully, her eyes never leaving him. For a long moment, they just looked at each other in silence. Ethan felt a strange connection forming, something he could not explain. This small, fragile alien girl had survived something terrible, and now she was here depending on him. And yet, she did not seem helpless. There was a quiet strength in her, hidden beneath the frailty. He felt a shiver run through him, a sense that saving her was not just an accident. Hours passed. Ethan monitored her vitals, gave her more food, and kept the environment calm and warm. Slowly, she began to recover. Her breathing steadied and her skin glowed with a faint, healthy light. She finally spoke a single word in a soft, musical voice. "Thank you," Ethan smiled. "You don't have to thank me, just rest, you're safe now." She looked at him with her glowing eyes and nodded slightly. Ethan did not know it yet, but in her eyes, a quiet recognition of destiny shone through. She remembered things from before, far before she met him, and something inside her told her that this human, this simple, kind man, was important, more important than she could yet explain. The night fell on the planet and the green mist thickened. Ethan stayed by her side, watching the stars through the thin atmosphere. He had delivered supplies before, rescued wildlife, even helped injured explorers, but nothing like this. Something about her presence felt different. He felt that in saving her, he had changed his own life forever, though he did not understand how. He wondered about her people, her species, and why she had been left to die. He wondered what dangers existed beyond the cliffs and glowing forests. But for now, those questions could wait. Right now, she needed care, and he needed to be there for her. Morning came with a faint violet light spilling across the rocky canyon. Ethan checked her again. She was awake, her blue eyes even brighter, and she reached out her tiny hand to touch his arm. Ethan felt a warmth that was strange and deep. "You're special," he said softly. "I don't know who you are or what you are, but you're special. You're going to survive this." She blinked slowly and gave a faint smile. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I will because of you." Ethan did not understand her words fully, but he felt their meaning. Somehow, the bond between them was already forming, stronger than words could describe. He did not yet know that the small act of giving her food, of showing simple human compassion, was about to change the future of not only their lives but of entire worlds. He lifted her gently and carried her back to the ship. The life sensor still registered her as weak, but he could see the improvement. He had no idea how fragile she had been or how much danger she had faced. But he knew this. He would not let anything harm her, no matter the cost. As they prepared to leave the canyon, Ethan caught one last glance at the empty, glowing plains. He felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. The planet was quiet, but it was not safe. Many dangers lurked in the shadows. Yet he also felt a spark of hope, tiny and bright, like the glow of her skin in the dark. For the first time in his long travels, he realized that saving a life could feel like saving more than one. It could feel like saving the future itself. And for Ethan Carter, that future was now tied to a fragile, glowing alien girl who had no name yet, but who had already begun to change his heart in ways he could not yet understand. Ethan Carter steered his small ship through the thin, misty atmosphere. Lyra lay on a blanket in the cargo bay, curled up and quiet. Her breathing was steady, and the faint glow of her skin had brightened since the day before. She was stronger now, but still fragile. Ethan watched her closely, feeling a mix of awe and concern. He had made a simple bed for her with soft blankets and padded panels. He had also set up a small light to mimic the planet's dim sun. He didn't know much about her species, or even her age. She looked like a small child, but her eyes carried something old and deep, like she had seen far more than any human child ever could. Ethan knelt beside her and offered some more food. She accepted it slowly, but this time she looked at him and tried to speak. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft and musical. Ethan blinked in surprise. "Yeah, that's me. How do you know my name?" Lyra's glowing eyes studied him for a long moment. "I remember." Ethan frowned. He had expected a language barrier, maybe simple gestures, but she seemed to understand him, and she seemed to remember something important. "Remember what?" he asked gently. Lyra did not answer. She only closed her eyes and rested her head against the blanket. Ethan felt a strange chill run through him. There was something unusual about her, something he could not yet explain. He had rescued many creatures before, but never one that felt aware of him in this way. He spent the rest of the day monitoring her. He checked her vitals, adjusted the blankets, and made sure the ship's temperature was just right. The planet outside was quiet, but he knew it was not safe. Strange noises came from the cliffs and valleys, distant howls of creatures he could not identify. Ethan had been trained to handle threats, but he had never faced anything like this. As the hours passed, Lyra began to move more on her own. She lifted her head, stretched her small arms, and tried to sit up. Ethan helped her gently. "You're getting stronger," he said. "Good work." Lyra smiled faintly. "Because you helped me." Ethan shook his head. "I'm just doing what's right." She looked at him with her glowing blue eyes. "No, more than right. Important." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He did not understand her words fully, but the tone carried weight. She was not just weak and fragile, she was aware of something larger. Somehow, she knew that their meeting was not a coincidence. The next morning, Ethan prepared to explore the nearby area. He wanted to see if there was anything that could explain her condition or her presence on this planet. Lyra insisted on coming with him, despite her small size and weakness. Ethan was reluctant, but she climbed into his arms, surprisingly strong, and he carried her carefully. The canyon was quiet, the mist thick, and the strange glowing plants cast long shadows across the rocks. Ethan kept his senses alert. He had a scanner and a small energy pistol for protection, but he knew the best weapon was caution and his own ingenuity. As they walked, Lyra began to point at the plants, the rocks, and small symbols etched into the cliffs. She spoke in her musical language, and Ethan tried to mimic the sounds. Slowly he realized she was giving him directions, guiding him to a hidden path that led deeper into the canyon. "What are you showing me?" he asked. Lyra looked up at him and smiled faintly. "Home, safe, find." Ethan nodded. He did not understand fully, but he trusted her. He followed her guidance carefully. The path twisted and turned, narrow and uneven. Strange creatures scurried in the shadows, but they did not approach. It was as if they recognized Lyra. Finally, they reached a small clearing. In the center was a structure partially hidden by vines and glowing moss. It was unlike any human building, tall and elegant, with curved shapes and glowing lines that seemed alive. Ethan felt awe. This place was ancient and somehow familiar. Lyra stepped forward on her own small feet, moving carefully over the rocks. She ran her hands over the glowing lines and whispered something in her language. The building responded. The lines glowed brighter, and a soft hum filled the air. Ethan stepped back, amazed. "What is this place?" he asked. Lyra looked at him, her eyes serious. "My family before lost me." Ethan's heart raced. She was not just any alien. She belonged to a family of importance. She had survived, and now she was here in her ancestral place. Somehow he realized that she was special, more than he had first understood. As they explored the structure, Ethan noticed symbols on the walls. They glowed faintly as Lyra touched them. She seemed to understand them instinctively, as if she had known them all her life. Ethan scanned them with his device, trying to interpret the meaning. He could detect energy patterns, but the symbol's true meaning remained a mystery. Suddenly, A sound echoed from the entrance. Ethan turned, pistol ready. A small group of alien scavengers had appeared, watching them. They were thin, wiry creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes. They moved cautiously, but it was clear they intended harm. Ethan stepped protectively in front of Lyra. "Stay behind me," he said. The aliens hissed and moved closer. Ethan fired a warning shot into the ground and the creatures paused, surprised by the energy pulse. But there were too many. He realized that he could not fight them all in a direct attack. He had to be smart. He noticed a weak part of the wall, a section that could collapse with careful pressure. He aimed and fired a controlled blast. Dust and rocks fell, blocking the path of the aliens. They hissed in frustration. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. "Come on, this way." They ran deeper into the structure, following twisting corridors. Lyra led the way with surprising speed, as if she knew exactly where to go. Ethan marveled at her agility. She was small, but her movements were precise and confident. Finally, they reached a room that felt different from the rest. It glowed with a warm, golden light. Symbols covered the walls, pulsing gently. In the center of the room was a small pedestal, and on it rested an object that looked like a crystal. Lyra ran forward and touched it. The crystal pulsed with energy and a wave of warmth spread through the room. Ethan watched, amazed. "What is it?" he asked. Lyra turned to him, her eyes shining brighter than ever. "Power, protection, my people." He realized then that she was more than a survivor. She was a part of a lineage, a line of rulers or guardians. Somehow, saving her had not only rescued her life, it had preserved something important for her people. Ethan felt a sense of responsibility he had never felt before. This small, fragile girl in his arms was not just someone in need of help. She was someone whose life carried meaning for an entire civilization. And now, that responsibility rested with him. They stayed in the room for a while. Lyra rested, her small body glowing faintly with energy from the crystal. Ethan studied the symbols and the structure. He realized this place had been abandoned long ago, yet it still retained power. He wondered what had happened to her family, to her people. And he wondered what dangers might still be out there. As night fell on the planet, the mist grew thicker and the glowing plants cast eerie shadows across the canyon. Ethan and Lyra returned to the ship carefully. She rested in his arms, exhausted but calmer than before. Ethan checked her vitals once more. She was safe for now, but he knew this was only the beginning. He stared out at the dark landscape, thinking about what had happened. He had come here for a simple supply mission, expecting nothing more than quiet and routine. Instead, he had found a small alien girl, dying, and somehow saved her. And in doing so, he had become part of something far larger than himself. Ethan realized that he would not be able to leave her here again. She could not survive alone in this world. He had to protect her, help her grow stronger, and understand the truth about her people. And perhaps, he thought, she could help him understand things he had never known about the galaxy. As he prepared the ship for the night, Ethan felt a strange sense of destiny. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing. This small, glowing alien girl was no ordinary life form, and he, in saving her, had begun a journey that would change both their lives forever. Lyra stirred in his arms and whispered, "Thank you, Ethan." He smiled softly. "You don't need to thank me. We're in this together now." And for the first time, Ethan felt that their bond was not just about survival. It was about trust, about destiny, and about something deeper that neither of them fully understood yet. Outside, the wind of the planet howled through the cliffs, carrying the faint sounds of unknown creatures. Inside the ship, the light of the stars shone softly on Ethan and Lyra. One small act of kindness had grown into something far greater. And the galaxy was about to notice. Ethan Carter stood at the edge of the canyon, holding Lyra in his arms. The sun was low, painting the rocky cliffs with soft orange light. The mist that hovered over the planet gave everything an eerie glow. Ethan had carried her through the night, guided by her instincts, and now they were both awake, alert, and aware that danger was not far away. Lyra's small hand rested against his chest. She was quiet, but her blue eyes were bright and alert, scanning the shadows. Ethan could feel her tension. She was not afraid in the way humans were afraid, but cautious, like she had survived worse than he could imagine. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. Ethan frowned. "Feel what?" "The hunters, they come," she said. Ethan's heart tightened. She had survived so much already, and now there were others who wanted to harm her. He scanned the area with his handheld sensor. Movement. Small, fast. Too fast for human eyes to see clearly. "They're here," Ethan said, his voice low. "We have to move." He stepped forward carefully, looking for a path that would give them some advantage. The canyon twisted and turned, with high cliffs on either side. Rocks jutted out, and strange glowing plants cast shadows that could hide enemies. Ethan kept his senses sharp. He had faced dangerous creatures before, but this felt different. These were intelligent predators, not just animals. As they moved, Ethan noticed small tracks in the dust. Thin, clawed feet, moving in patterns that suggested more than one. He tightened his grip on Lyra. She leaned against him, small but steady. He realized that she was not helpless even if her body looked fragile. Somehow she carried strength inside her, hidden and quiet, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, a hissing sound echoed from the rocks above. Ethan looked up. A small group of alien scavengers dropped from the cliffs, their eyes glowing bright red in the dim light. They were thin and wiry, with long limbs and sharp claws. Their teeth were visible, jagged, and dangerous. "Get behind me," Ethan said. Lyra did not move. She stood slightly behind him, small but ready. Ethan could see the determination in her eyes. She was not just a victim. She was something more. The scavengers advanced slowly, circling them. Ethan raised his pistol and fired a warning shot. A bright energy bolt struck the rocks near them, causing a small shower of sparks. The creatures hissed and paused, surprised by the sudden attack. But there were too many. Ethan realized he could not fight them all directly. He had to be smart. He spotted a ledge above them, narrow but strong. If he could reach it, he could use the high ground. He glanced at Lyra. "Can you climb?" he asked. She nodded. "Follow me." Ethan followed her carefully. She moved with surprising agility, small hands and feet finding holds on the rocky surface. He lifted her gently over difficult spots, feeling her trust in him. It was not just a physical bond. He felt connected to her in a way that went beyond explanation. Finally, they reached the ledge. Ethan crouched, scanning the area. The scavengers had gathered below, trying to reach them. Ethan's mind raced. They could not stay here forever. They needed a plan. He noticed a small cluster of glowing plants near the edge of the ledge. Their stems were strong and flexible. Ethan had an idea. He grabbed a few and tied them into crude slings, using the plants as makeshift ropes. "Lyra, hold on," he said. She nodded. Her small hands gripped his firmly. Ethan threw one end of the plant rope down to the cliff below, anchoring it to a large rock. Then he tied the other end around himself and Lyra. "On three," he said. "1, 2, 3. He jumped, swinging over the edge, landing on another ledge below. Lyra clung to him, her small body tense but steady. They landed safely, and Ethan quickly scanned the area. The scavengers hissed in frustration, unable to follow. "Good work," Ethan said, catching his breath. "You're braver than you look." Lyra smiled faintly. "You brave too." They moved quickly through the canyon, following a narrow path that led to a hidden valley. The valley was covered in strange, glowing plants that hid them from view. Ethan set Lyra down on a soft patch of moss. She looked around, alert but calmer now. "You need to rest," he said. "We're safe here for a while." Lyra nodded. "Thank you." Ethan watched her, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. She was small, fragile, and yet stronger than any human he had ever met. There was a quiet power inside her, something that could not be measured by physical strength alone. As night fell, Ethan kept watch. The valley was quiet, but he knew the scavengers would return. He built a small perimeter with energy traps, using his scanner to detect movement. He also prepared more food and water for Lyra, who rested on the moss, glowing faintly in the dark. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you." Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him. "Safe because you—" Ethan shook his head. "No. We're in this together." She smiled faintly, then closed her eyes. Ethan stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the valley. Strange creatures moved in the distance, but they kept their distance. The planet was alive, full of dangers, but also full of beauty. He realized that Lyra belonged here in some way, even if she had been abandoned. The next day, Ethan decided to explore further. He needed to understand more about Lyra's past and perhaps find clues about her people. She insisted on going with him, and he let her walk beside him, holding her small hand for support. They walked through the valley, discovering strange ruins partially hidden by glowing vines. Ethan scanned the structures. They were old, ancient even, but still intact in many places. Symbols etched into the walls glowed faintly when Lyra touched them. She looked at him, her eyes serious. "This, my home, before," Ethan nodded. "I understand. We'll figure out what happened, okay?" Lyra's small hands moved over the symbols, and suddenly a soft hum filled the air. The ground beneath them vibrated slightly. Ethan stepped back, surprised. The symbols were reacting to her presence, almost as if they recognized her. "You're connected to this place," he said. Lyra nodded. "My family gone, me left, protect must." Ethan felt a deep sense of responsibility. She was not just a survivor, she carried the legacy of her people, and now he was the one who could help her protect it. As they explored the ruins, a sudden roar echoed from the cliffs above. Ethan looked up. Another group of scavengers appeared, larger this time, with long claws and glowing eyes. They were moving quickly, aggressive, and clearly had tracked them. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run!" They sprinted through the ruins, dodging falling rocks and energy traps he had set earlier. Lyra moved with surprising speed, her small body agile and precise. She seemed to know the paths, guiding Ethan away from danger. One of the scavengers lunged at them, but Ethan fired a controlled shot, hitting a rock behind it and causing a small collapse. The creature screeched and retreated. Finally, they reached a hidden chamber deep within the ruins. The walls glowed softly, and the air was warm. Lyra collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but alive. Ethan knelt beside her, checking her vitals. She was safe for now. "You're amazing," he said softly. "I don't know how you do it, but you're amazing." Lyra smiled faintly. "Not me alone. You help." Ethan shook his head. "No. We're in this together." She looked at him with glowing eyes, and for a moment Ethan felt something he could not explain. It was more than gratitude. It was trust, connection, and something deeper, something that hinted at the future. Outside, the scavengers regrouped, their hissing cries echoing through the canyon. Ethan realized that their enemies were relentless, but he also knew something else. With Lyra, with her knowledge and his human ingenuity, they had a chance. A real chance to survive and uncover the truth about her people. As night fell again, Ethan set up a secure perimeter around the chamber. Lyra rested on a soft patch of moss, glowing faintly, her breathing steady. Ethan watched her, thinking about everything that had happened. He had come here expecting a routine mission. Instead, he had found a small alien girl, a survivor, and now, a companion whose life was tied to something much greater than either of them. He realized that protecting her was no longer a choice. It was a duty. And as he gazed at the stars through the open ceiling of the chamber, he knew that the journey ahead would be dangerous, but also extraordinary. Ethan Carter had saved a life. And in doing so, he had stepped into a story far bigger than himself. A story of courage, survival, and destiny that would shape the fate of worlds. Ethan Carter stood in the hidden chamber, watching Lyra. She was small, fragile in appearance, but her glowing blue eyes now carried a strange confidence. The faint light of the symbols on the walls reflected in her skin, making her look almost otherworldly. Ethan had spent days helping her recover, keeping her safe, and learning that she was more than a child. She carried knowledge and strength that no human could understand fully. "Lyra," he said softly, "you've been through so much. I want to know, who are you? Why were you alone?" She looked at him for a long moment, her small hands tracing the glowing symbols on the walls. "I born last of line," she said slowly, carefully choosing words. "Family gone, my people hunted, I hidden, safe survive." Ethan knelt beside her, his heart pounding. He was beginning to understand she was not just a survivor, she was the last of her royal line. Somehow her survival carried the future of her people. "You're a princess," he said, amazed. "Your royalty?" Lyra nodded faintly. "Yes, princess. Protect must, power inside." Ethan felt a chill. He had rescued her when she was weak, but now he realized that she was far more important than he had imagined. Saving her life had not only protected her, but the future of an entire civilization. "Power inside?" he asked. She looked at him with glowing eyes. "Yes, abilities, I feel it, strong now." Ethan watched as her small body began to glow brighter, pulsing with energy. He had noticed subtle changes before, her quick healing, her alertness, the way she seemed to sense danger, but now it was clear. Lyra's abilities were real and they were extraordinary. Suddenly, the symbols on the walls reacted. Lines of light moved along the surfaces, forming patterns that Ethan could not understand. The energy in the room grew warmer, almost alive. Lyra touched the pedestal in the center, and a soft hum filled the chamber. She closed her eyes and focused. The glow from her skin intensified, spreading to her small hands, and the symbols on the walls pulsed in response. Ethan felt the energy wash over him. It was not harmful, but it was powerful, something far beyond human comprehension. He realized that Lyra was connected to this place and that she could activate its ancient energy. "You control it," he said quietly. "You're part of this place." Lyra nodded. "Yes, protect my people, must learn use power." Ethan's mind raced. If she could control this energy, if she could learn to use it fully, then she was not just a survivor. She could become a queen, a leader, someone who could change the galaxy. But that also meant danger. Anyone who wanted her power would come for her, and soon. He looked at her, determination growing in his chest. "I will help you," he said. "I will keep you safe. We'll figure this out together." Lyra's eyes softened. She reached out her small hand and touched his arm. "You help, I trust." Ethan felt a deep warmth. He had rescued her when she was dying, and now she trusted him. That trust was powerful, stronger than anything else. But the quiet moment did not last. A sudden vibration shook the chamber. Ethan looked toward the entrance. He had set traps to keep intruders away, but this was different. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the hum of energy from the symbols grew louder. "They come," Lyra whispered. Ethan's pulse quickened. He grabbed his pistol and pulled Lyra close. "Stay behind me," he said. From the shadows, a group of alien hunters appeared. They were larger than the scavengers Ethan had fought before, with armored limbs and sharp energy weapons. Their eyes glowed red, and they moved with precision. Ethan realized immediately that they were not here to hunt for food, they were here for Lyra. "You will not take her," Ethan shouted, firing his weapon. Energy bolts streaked through the air, hitting rocks and creating small explosions. The hunters recoiled but did not retreat. They were skilled, relentless, and clearly experienced in combat. Ethan ducked behind a glowing pedestal, pulling Lyra down with him. "We have to move," he said urgently. "This place is dangerous, but it can protect us if we use it right." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. She touched the pedestal again, and the symbols on the walls pulsed in response. A barrier of soft, golden light rose around them, forming a protective shield. The hunters struck it with their weapons, but the energy absorbed the attacks. Ethan watched in awe. "You can do this?" he asked. Lyra nodded, concentrating. "Yes, protect now." The hunters hissed in frustration, striking the barrier again and again, but it held. Ethan realized that Lyra's abilities were growing stronger by the moment. She was not just powerful, she was learning to control her energy. "Good work," Ethan said softly. "Keep it up. We're safe for now." Lyra's small hands trembled slightly, but her focus did not waver. She was determined. Ethan could feel her resolve. She was not afraid, not for herself. She was protecting something far greater than either of them. Hours passed, and the hunters eventually retreated, realizing that the barrier was too strong to break. Ethan and Lyra remained inside the chamber, catching their breath. "You did it," Ethan said, amazed. "You protected us." Lyra looked at him, glowing faintly. "I learned fast, must protect my people future." Ethan nodded. He realized that saving her life had set in motion something extraordinary. Lyra was not just an alien girl. She was a force, a protector, and a future queen. And he, in saving her, had become part of that destiny. Over the next few days, Ethan helped Lyra explore the ruins. She learned to control her abilities, touching the symbols and activating their energy. Ethan was careful to guide her, showing her how to focus and remain calm. With each day, she grew stronger, her small frame pulsing with more energy, her confidence increasing. One day, while practicing in the chamber, Lyra touched a large symbol on the wall. A projection appeared, showing images of her people. Ethan gasped. The images depicted a civilization of glowing beings, elegant and tall, with energy flowing through them like light. He realized that Lyra's people had been powerful, respected, and now endangered. "They gone?" Ethan asked. Lyra nodded, her small face serious. "Hunted, all gone, I last, must survive, learn, lead." Ethan felt a mix of awe and fear. She was alone, carrying the legacy of her entire people. And now she was learning to use the power that came with that legacy. He realized that her survival was not just important, it was critical for the balance of the galaxy. "You're ready," Ethan said quietly. "You can do this. We'll face them together." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. "Yes, together." Suddenly, the chamber trembled again. This time, the energy in the walls pulsed violently, reacting to something outside. Ethan looked toward the entrance. A new threat had arrived, larger ships, armed with energy weapons, descending from the sky. They were not scavengers, they were soldiers coming for Lyra. Ethan grabbed her hand. "We have to leave now. Can you control the energy to help us?" Lyra nodded, her small hands glowing. "Yes, barrier, protect." They moved toward the exit, activating the symbols as they went. A wave of golden energy swept through the ruins, blocking the soldiers and keeping Ethan and Lyra safe. Ethan realized that the planet itself responded to Lyra's presence. She was not just a survivor, she was a key, a living connection to her people's legacy. As they reached the ship, Ethan helped Lyra inside. She took the controls with him, small hands glowing as she activated protective shields around the ship. Ethan piloted them out of the canyon, the soldiers below unable to follow. Once they were safely in the sky, Ethan looked at Lyra. "You did it. You saved us again." Lyra smiled faintly, glowing softly. "We together, always." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that their bond had grown stronger than ever. She was not just a child he had saved. She was his companion, his ally, and someone whose future was intertwined with his own. As they flew over the glowing landscape, Ethan knew that the journey ahead would be dangerous. The galaxy would not allow her to survive without challenge. But he also knew something else. With courage, trust, and human ingenuity, they could face anything. Lyra leaned against him, exhausted but alive. Her small body glowed softly, and her eyes held a quiet confidence. Ethan realized that he had seen only the beginning of her power. She was not just a survivor. She was a leader, a protector, and a future queen. And he, in saving her, had become part of that future. The stars stretched across the sky as they flew into the unknown. Ethan Carter had learned a lesson that few humans ever understood. Compassion, courage, and trust could create bonds that shaped the destiny of worlds. And with Lyra by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but together they were unstoppable. Ethan Carter steered the small ship through the glowing skies of Lyra's planet. Below them, the landscape was alive with colors he had never seen before: greenish mountains, rivers of shimmering light, and forests that glowed in soft blue and gold. Lyra sat beside him, small and fragile in appearance, but radiating power and confidence. Her glowing blue eyes scanned the horizon, alert to every movement, every shadow. "They're coming," she said softly, her voice musical but serious. Ethan nodded. He had been expecting this. The soldiers who had tried to capture her before would not give up easily. They had come for her power, her lineage, and they would stop at nothing. But Ethan felt a calm determination. He had faced danger before, but now he was fighting not just for survival, but for a future, for Lyra, and for a civilization that depended on her. "We'll be ready," he said. "Stay close to me." Lyra nodded. Her small hands glowed faintly as she activated protective shields around the ship. Ethan admired her focus. Even in the face of danger, she remained calm and in control. It was clear now that she was not just a child he had saved. She was a leader, a queen in training, and her abilities were growing stronger every day. The first wave of ships appeared on the horizon, sleek and black, armed with energy weapons that glowed red in the dim light. Ethan's ship was small and lightly armed, but he had ingenuity on his side. He studied the approaching fleet, looking for weaknesses. "Lyra," he said, "we need to trick them. Use your shields to confuse them. I'll guide the ship through the canyon." Lyra's glowing hands pulsed as she nodded. "Yes, together." The enemy ships advanced, firing bursts of red energy. Ethan piloted the ship skillfully, dodging and weaving through the glowing forests and jagged cliffs. Lyra extended her hands and a golden barrier shimmered around them. The energy pulse deflected several blasts, protecting the small ship from serious damage. "Good work," Ethan said. "Keep it up. Don't stop." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter and she focused her power. The shields expanded, forming a protective dome that not only covered their ship but also interfered with the sensors of the enemy fleet. The soldiers fired blindly, unable to target them accurately. Ethan smiled. Humanity had always relied on cleverness and courage, and now it was paying off. "They can't hit us," he said. "Your power is incredible." Lyra's small voice was firm. "We win. Protect people." The enemy ships regrouped, but Ethan had already planned their next move. He guided the ship into a narrow canyon, forcing the larger ships to slow down or risk crashing into the walls. Lyra's energy shields reflected light off the cliffs, blinding some of the attackers. Ethan took a deep breath. "On my mark, we hit them together. Use your energy to push them back." Lyra nodded, her small hands glowing with golden light. "Together." Ethan counted down. 3, 2, 1. They struck. Ethan piloted the ship at high speed, weaving through the canyon while Lyra projected energy waves outward. The force of her power disrupted the enemy ships, knocking several off course. Explosions lit the canyon as ships collided with cliffs or each other. The remaining attackers retreated, realizing they could not compete with Lyra's power combined with Ethan's skill. When the last ship disappeared over the horizon, Ethan and Lyra floated in the quiet of the canyon. The energy from Lyra's shields faded and she looked at him, glowing softly but smiling. "You did it," Ethan said. Lyra shook her head. "We did it together." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. It was more than relief. It was pride, trust, and a deep bond that had grown over their time together. He had saved her when she was dying, but she had also saved them both with her courage and power. After the battle, they returned to the hidden chamber deep within the ruins. Lyra stepped onto the pedestal, her hands glowing as she touched the symbols on the walls. Ethan watched in awe as the symbols responded, projecting images of her people, her ancestors, and the history of her lineage. "They see me," Lyra whispered. "Recognize me?" Ethan nodded. "You're their queen. You always were." Lyra's eyes shimmered with tears, glowing brighter than ever. "Yes, must protect, lead." Ethan stepped forward. "And I'll be here by your side always." Lyra looked at him, her small hand reaching out. "Yes, always." The chamber seemed to hum with energy, as if acknowledging their bond. Ethan realized that saving her had not just protected a life, but had preserved a legacy. Lyra's people had survived through her, and now she was ready to claim her place as their leader. Word of their victory spread quickly. News traveled across the planet and into the galaxy. Aliens and humans alike heard that the last princess of a once great civilization had survived, and that her human companion had helped her. Ethan's bravery and cleverness became known. The galaxy began to recognize humanity's value, not just as explorers, but as beings capable of courage, empathy, and extraordinary ingenuity. A ceremony was arranged in the ruins, now illuminated with golden light from Lyra's energy. Leaders from nearby planets arrived to witness the recognition of Lyra as queen. Ethan stood beside her, small but steady, his heart filled with pride and love. The ceremony was simple but powerful. Lyra touched the central crystal, and her energy spread throughout the hall. The symbols on the walls glowed brightly, showing the history of her people and their trust in her. Ethan watched as she stood tall, small in size but commanding in presence. "You have survived," one of the leaders said. "And with your courage you have preserved the legacy of your people." Lyra nodded, her glowing eyes focused. "I will protect, lead, guide my people." Ethan reached for her hand. "And I'll be here," he said softly, "with you." Lyra smiled faintly, her small hand glowing in his larger one. "Yes, always." The leaders bowed, acknowledging her power and right to rule. Ethan felt a surge of pride. He had not just saved her life, he had helped shape the future of a civilization. The galaxy would remember this moment, the human who rescued the last princess and stood by her side. As the ceremony ended, Ethan and Lyra stood together outside the ruins, looking at the glowing forests and shimmering rivers. The planet was alive, vibrant, and full of promise. Ethan realized that the journey had changed both of them. He had found courage, purpose, and a bond that transcended species. Lyra had found survival, strength, and a companion she could trust. "You saved me," Lyra said softly. Ethan shook his head. "No, we saved each other." She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with warmth. "Yes, together," Ethan smiled. The stars stretched across the sky, glittering like diamonds. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but together they had faced it and won. Lyra was a queen, a leader, and a survivor. Ethan was her companion, her ally, and something more. As they prepared to leave the planet and travel to her people's capital, Ethan felt a sense of destiny. They had been brought together by chance, by compassion, and by courage. Now they were unstoppable. The journey ahead would be challenging. There would be threats, obstacles, and enemies who sought to take Lyra's power. But Ethan knew one thing: together they could face anything. Human ingenuity and courage, combined with Lyra's extraordinary abilities and wisdom, were a force the galaxy had never seen before. Lyra leaned against him, small and glowing, her blue eyes reflecting the stars. "Future, ours," she whispered. Ethan wrapped an arm around her. "Yes, ours." The ship lifted into the sky, leaving the glowing forests below. Ethan looked out at the horizon, knowing that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would see what humans could do when they acted with courage, compassion, and intelligence. And Lyra, the last princess, would lead her people with him by her side. The stars stretched endlessly, and for the first time Ethan understood something he had only felt before. Humanity was small but clever, vulnerable but brave. Alone, they were just explorers. Together, with trust and courage, they could change the course of worlds. Lyra's glowing hand found his and he squeezed it gently. "Together," she said. "Together," Ethan agreed. And as the ship soared into the unknown, the galaxy witnessed the beginning of a new story. One of survival, courage, and the bond between a human and the last alien princess. A story that would be remembered for generations. Ethan Carter had saved a life. Lyra had found her strength, and together they had changed the fate of the galaxy.